Stream Viewer. This is a small module just to have a quick look on how to access the Stream Viewer, showing you the actual communication going back and forward between the DataMiner node and the actual data source. So all the commands we're sending and the responses we're receiving, you will be able to verify that in this small tool and identify potential issues you have while setting up a new element in your DataMiner system. Let's take a look at that. So very short, just a small about and how to access the Stream Viewer and how the interface looks like, which is actually pretty easy, and final remarks. So that's how it looks like. The Stream Viewer you have on the right hand side, it's a little bit more, you could say, low level, because we see the actual communication going back and forward between the DataMiner agent or the DataMiner nodes and whatever element data source we're interrogating. So if we're receiving information or if we're pulling information, you will see all the commands and responses going back and forward. So if something is going not as you expected while setting up a new element, that's definitely a place you want to check if you're having problems with access denied or timeouts or incompatible firmware or these kind of things. That's the typical first place you go to when setting up and troubleshooting communication problems. So what we will see is, first of all, how to access that. Well, very convenient in the right-click menu or the hamburger menu of an element in your DataMiner system, where you can start and stop an element, mask it, and edit and delete it, of course. We'll dive into that later on. You do have that view Stream Viewer available there. So wherever you right click on an element or use the hamburger, you can immediately access View Stream Viewer there. So it's nicely integrated so that you can immediately from any place just access that conveniently. Now, the user interface itself, it's very simple, but then again, let's take a quick look at that. We do have, first of all, the communication going back and forward in the main window, you could say. We do have on the left-hand side a little bit of a tree structure that allows you to filter down on certain specifics because as you can see, you can just by default see all the communication going back and forward, but you could also dive into a specific IP because maybe we're using different ports to connect to, maybe SNMP 161 and HTTP on port 80 or 443 to fetch information, so you can filter on the different connections we have. And within that, you can also have different groups of information we're retrieving that's defined in the protocol. So you can really filter down on that. On the bottom side, you have a clear, all clear, the freeze. If it's going too fast, you can just freeze your pane. You can also save whatever you see here into a file so that you can send it off to your contact person that's maybe gonna dig deeper into that issue you're seeing here. And a sniffer allows you to actually immediately dump it into a file, allowing you to have it running for a longer period of time. And you do, of course, also have that find on top, which speaks for itself. Now, to go into the window where we see the actual communication, first of all, you have arrows going, I always refer to it as it goes out of the window, like the one indicated. That's whatever DataMiner sends out. So that's a command we send. And below it, you can see the response coming back from our data source we're pulling here. So that's a command and a response. It has a time. It has also a name we can define in the driver. And then below that, you do have the actual packet. In this case, it is a serial or ASCII hex device, which is basically sending out, that's first of all a counter, zeros or 20 for all the bytes that are behind it. In this case, the hex is displayed, but you can also see that the ASCII format on the right-hand side is actually readable. So this is a readable protocol you can see here. Sometimes, yeah, it depends on the protocol. It might make more sense to take a look at the hex, or it might make sense more sense to look at the ASCII. Of course, it depends on the driver, what you see here. It could also be SNMP or other protocols. I will immediately show an example. If you would see a timeout or experience a timeout, it will be printed in capitals in this editor or in this window that a timeout has been experienced here. This is an example of SNMP. Basically, it's just written out the name of the parameter we're retrieving and the result coming back right underneath it. So you have a get, and then the get failed here. So if you would have like an community string that is incorrect, you would have an access denied there. So these kind of things you can also see in here. So a couple of examples to wrap it up. Let me pull up my DataMiner agent. We do have an internal system here where I can open up, for instance, a stream viewer of a Cisco. So that's a Cisco. And now it immediately popped up the content. Let me just open it up again, because it is possible, like now. If you open it up, you're just jumping into the communication, but the polling maybe only happens like every 10 seconds or so. So we do have timers polling the information from the equipment or the data source. So it is possible that it might take a while before you see certain things passing by, and it starts to build up, as we can see here now. So at any point in time, you can do a freeze to go through it to see, for instance, the sys uptime we're retrieving here with immediately behind it the number of the sys uptime that we retrieved, the power on, etc. So you can unfreeze again. So you can filter on the groups, etc., and save it as a file or a text file to send it off to somebody else for further investigation. Now to go to another example, so it could be more serial as well. This is a serial example where we see more commands and responses either in hex or ASCII passing by. So it basically, let me freeze. So it goes out of the window here. So it retrieves a parameter for the 34 and it gets a response back in there. Okay, that was a clear I did in meantime. And you can also, for instance, take a look at another example. In this case, we are using WMI. WMI is Windows Management Instrumentation. So it's a kind of like queries, you could say. Let me go back to the top. So we select the percent processor time from a certain subset, and it gives me back, this is a table. So all the cells of a table that is coming back. So depends a little bit on what kind of protocol you have. Also note that depending on the log level, it is possible that other information might also be shown inside that stream viewer. More internal calculations, for instance, that a driver is doing. It is possible that we also show that in the stream viewer. If your log level is high enough, we might also add some additional information there. But by default, that's not the case. So that's a very simple tool to allow you to debug and troubleshoot the communication towards a data source. So if you ever set up an element or it does a little bit funky, you can go into that stream viewer to investigate that in more detail, what is coming back from the device. Let's go for the next one.